Hello and welcome to the Closer's Playbook, a podcast about selling your services as a freelancer. I'm Pete Pepper, here with Tyler Poole.
How you doing, Pete?
Good morning, Tyler.
Good morning.
So, wrapping up our mini-series, our three-parter.
Sounds good.
We're talking about working with existing clients, specifically in these three parts. First episode, we did, new and existing?
Yep.
Or new versus existing.
And the second was referrals.
Second was referrals, and that kind of leads us to business reviews. So business reviews are an important part of my business and have been as a seller for 15 years. Do you use business reviews?
After conversations we've had, I don't use them in the formal sense that you do, but I do have them with clients, and I'll after you explain what you're talking about, I'll talk about how they differentiate with like a smaller one-man operation or a smaller company that's freelance. not as set.
Yeah, sure. So
as formal, I should say.
Yeah, so the reason business reviews is following referrals is business reviews are a great place to ask for a referral. Mm-hmm. How I use a business review, a lot of times you'll hear QBR, quarterly business review, right? It's a check-in every quarter, every 3 months with a customer. And sometimes they're annually, sometimes they're biannually. It just depends on your business, and not just your business, but what you're doing with your customer, what type of work you're doing. So a business review for me over my career has been, generally, you've got a pretty standard slide deck. And the slide deck, you're going to put the customer logo on the first title slide. You're going to put your name and info on. Then you're going to have an agenda slide where it says, here's what we're going to talk about. For me right now, I start with feedback. That's number one. Why? How are things going? Because why? I want to know where can I improve.
Okay.
Right? Where have I dropped? Maybe where have I even dropped the ball? Right? What do you need different from me? What's been going well?
Has that ever opened up a conversation, a non-constructive conversation?
No. When you're going into the business review, you should know your relationship with your customer. Mm-hmm. A lot of times if things are going not going well, I'm not going to do that in a business review. I'm going to say hey, I feel like maybe we're not on track here.
Okay.
What's going on?
So, and the reason I ask that question is I envision you opening up the floor, and then instead of having a business review, they have a 15-minute gripe session or half an hour gripe session, and that's why I was surprised with you opening with feedback. But
no, I could see how that might happen in some cases, but I would use that. That's if they've got gripes, if they've got that, you want to get that out in the open, and you might have to if that feedback, you don't have to structure it this way, right? Mm-hmm. This is just one of many ways you could do it. But it's I like the feedback first.
I was going to say, and I think it's interesting because I definitely wouldn't structure it that way. And so it actually, I'm surprised you said it. And so I think hopefully some of our listeners are also surprised, and this clarification will be useful to everybody.
If you do get negative feedback, then you need to laser in on that. And not all feedback is going to be constructive.
Sure.
A lot of times the negative feedback is we didn't set proper expectations. So that can be an opportunity to reset expectations. Or, if somebody's giving you feedback that you are not doing what they think needs to be done, maybe you're not, and you just don't realize it. Mm-hmm. And so getting that feedback up front, what you don't want is if a customer is kind of pissed off, they've got gripes, and you just went through your whole business review, and at the end of my business review, I'm showing next steps, opportunities for us to do more. Well, if you're going through this whole thing and they've got problems with you, that's all out the window.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So I'd rather get that out of the way up front, because if they do have gripes, then I want to be able to address it. And then I might not finish the business. I might not do the business review the way that I expected. My next steps could be, hey, I will commit to doing X, Y, and Z because that's what you're telling me you need, and I can give that to you.
And instead of doing the business review you planned, it can be it can address the issues that they've already talked about. Yeah. Which actually it ties back to the first episode and keeping existing customers. Right. You know, right. So that can be a way of repairing or improving a relationship, developing more trust. So I like that.
Yeah, I actually, maybe slightly off topic, I have a peer who's really good with customers. She got so somebody left our org, went to a different part of the business, and they were transitioning this account over to her. And they said, by the way, they hate us, but they feel like they need to use us. Not a great way to start the relationship, right? Well, what she does really well is first she went and she dug into the entire, like everything she could find on the customer and on the customer relationship. And she talked to people internally. When she got on the phone with them for the first time, she just listened to them. She was like, hey, I understand that things haven't been going the way that you want them to go.
Okay.
I would like to understand where things have not gone well for you so far and where you need things to be. And then she shut up and listened. And they talked. And she said, you know what? There's nothing unreasonable here. And here's what I'm going to do. And now this customer, they have said multiple times, like, it's just so great working with you.
That's awesome.
Like now we're excited about working with you guys. Right. So you can take that feedback, be open to it. Right. Hopefully it's a lot of great feedback, but you should also dig to be like, what could I do better? Because there's something that they're probably holding back, because it's hard to give critical feedback for many people. Not everyone. Sometimes people are happy to give critical feedback. Sure. But just keep saying, okay, what else? What else? And then when there's nothing else, now you can move on.
Yep.
So get that feedback. And then I've used that feedback to then go in a slightly different direction with some of my business reviews, or to dive deeper in one area than I thought I would. So from there, like, we've got the feedback, and then I like to go into like, what's the state of things today? Right? Here's where we started and what we were looking to accomplish. Here's maybe our timeline of when we're going to do that.
Okay.
Here's where we're at on the timeline, and see where we're tracking. So it can be a great opportunity to do that. I also like to take and say, like, all right, here's you. Now here's the rest of the people that I work with, or the rest of your industry, or the rest. Like, let's compare it to something. Hey, maybe you've got 4 or 5 different services that you offer, and they're using one. This is an opportunity for you to say, like, hey, we haven't really talked about this much, but here are some other things that I do that are complementing to this. And here's how my other customers who use me for these other services, here's how we work together, right? And so that gives you an opportunity to sort of open their mind to other opportunities for working with you.
Okay.
It may also be a good opportunity to find out what other projects they have. So, hey, I just talked about, you gave me your feedback, and so I have that, and I'm going to work on those things that we talked about. Here's what we've done so far, where we're at, how things are going. What other projects do you have? What other goals or initiatives does the company have, do you have, that maybe I could help with?
So before we were recording this episode, you had hinted at this, and I think this is a really great point to dive into a little deeper, because it's an area where you can upsell or you can improve your offering to them. So you were talking about looking at the industry as a whole. So you've got a client in whatever, let's say.
Well, like, you do local SEO.
Okay, yeah, we'll use me as an example. Let's say I've got a plumbing client, okay, and I'm looking at the other 10 websites that are ranking around my client, and they all offer some service that my client isn't. And so it would be really interesting, or it would be really good for you to add this into your business review and say, hey, I was doing a comparison of your competitors, and I noticed that they all do this. Maybe it's 24-hour call.
Emergency service.
Service. Sure. Let's use that as an example. And so I was noticing that all of them use this as a service. This is something that there are actually programs, automated call programs out there. And so maybe I can add this service onto your thing and offer this to your clients for, X dollars a month. And it doesn't require any more work from you. You may have to hire an emergency technician.
Have somebody on call.
But you can have, those are ways to make more money as a business. They're ways to upgrade your service plan so you're selling more to that client.
Well, even for you, it could be that they have the service, but you haven't done anything with that particular service in your search engine optimization, services that you have. You can slice it up different ways, right? You could say plumbers, you could say other local companies. It could be things that they do. So think about ways that your other clients utilize you. We also talked about in the last episode, building yourself a referral network.
Yep.
So here are things that you don't necessarily do. They're not your core competency, but you can work with other people. You may get a referral fee from some of those, right? Or it may help you drive more leads from them, right? If you're all talking about, here's the services that my network can provide. Now you can be a referrer to good people, and it can bring you more referrals.
100%. Yeah. I had a client last year that we did a project to update her website. Like, she was using an old software. It was hard coded. And I have a associate that does web design. So I referred the two together, got a little commission, a little referral fee. And now it actually double benefited me, because now this client's website is extremely easy to work with. And it used to be just a nightmare. Yeah. And so not only did I get a referral fee, or a commission, I got an easier, my client has a better website, and an easier website, a faster website. She ranks better. And I mean, it was just a win-win-win.
So we've got sort of the order of my typical business review is like feedback, state of our relationship, of the business, of what we've been working on. Ask them what other projects they have. And I even tell them, like, sometimes people put me in this little box over here, but I want to understand your business goals and initiatives, and I want to understand your and your team's goals, because I have a network that I work with who may be able to help with that. Or there might be some things where I've acquired a new skill set, or have somebody coming on who does other type of work. So I want to understand what other goals. Has anything changed? That's also in there, right? Has anything changed as far as your goals, priorities, things like that? What other projects do you have? Projects, priorities, goals. And then, by the way, here's other things that I can help with. So if they're telling you, hey, I've got a project and it includes I need website maintenance. Well, if you've got a website maintenance person, going back to our first episode in here, website maintenance, right? Then I can say, hey, I actually have someone who I trust and who I would be happy to refer you to. Right. And it's up to you if you hire them, but I think you should at least have a discussion.
Right. Hey, have a conversation with them. Yeah. See if it works for both of you.
Yeah. So the business reviews, and you always want to, or I always want to leave a business review with some type of next steps, because it helps me keep the relationship going. If you find at the end of a business review that there's really no next steps, then maybe you've done all you can up to this point for this customer. So going back to the first episode about, like, when would you end a relationship with a customer? It could be that could be the case, right? Or you're just not going to grow your services after that review. But you can do another review later. Things can change over time. These business reviews are a great way to get feedback, to remind your customer of where you started from and where you're at, to show them how far we've come. Because when you're in it the day to day, it's not so easy to see. But when you can look back a few months, you're like, oh yeah, we started way back there, right? Remind them of how painful it was before you got started, and then show them how much you guys have done together to get to where you're at.
It's really interesting because I don't use formal business reviews. But it's something that I do I have a call with every single one of my clients at least once a month, and it's set up, and it always is. And this would be a great area for me to formalize, or, before that we hit record, we were talking about setting up a template. I have a proposal template. Why don't I have a business review template?
Yeah.
And it, obviously there are going to be things that change with each customer, and there are going to be things that apply to some that don't others. But this is something that doesn't have to be, number one, it looks more professional, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if it's something like that's set in stone or templated to some extent, and it shows a level of care to your clients. Where
it's also pretty common in the enterprise space, mid-market and up.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty common that if you're a strategic partner with a customer, strategic vendor, strategic partner, consultant, that they want business reviews, because part of it too is the people you're working with, they need to show that what they
money well spent.
Right, exactly. And it also gives them an opportunity to bring other people into the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
like their boss, to say, hey, we're going to have a business review with Tyler, who does all of our search engine optimization. And you can even seed it with like, here's the things that we're going to cover. Here's what I want to understand. Try some things out. Right. But like, hey, I would encourage you, if there's other people in the organization who might have questions about what we're working on, who have other goals, or whose projects might bump into ours,
Mm-hmm.
why don't you bring them on too? Because they might have questions.
Sure.
They might have concerns. I even say that. I want anyone who has questions or concerns about us working together on, because then you can control the narrative. Instead of having to go through, when somebody asks you a question about your business, you know it a lot better than people than your other customers.
Yeah.
So you can address it up front. And that's another way that you can keep existing business going.
Yeah.
It also gives you more contacts within the company. So I encourage customers to say, hey, I know you and I work together on the day-to-day. I want to do, and that might be your regular monthly call,
Mm-hmm.
is the two of you. But what I like to do is every 3, 4, 6 months, we sit down and do a business review, and we include other stakeholders. I like the term stakeholders because it's people who not necessarily like, they have a stake in what you're doing being successful.
That makes sense.
Right? So anyone who might have concerns, anyone who might have projects that this impacts, or whose projects could impact this, I would love for you to invite them. If you're not against it,
Mm-hmm.
invite them. And then you can bring them on and you get more people involved.
Okay.
This is something that the business reviews help them remind your customers of why they went with you, where they started from, where they're going. And then it also gives you that feedback, and the understanding of other goals and projects gives you some data on what customers want. And if you need to, maybe it's like, wow, I've heard this on my last 3 business reviews. I might need to start either looking for somebody who has this service, or even doing this service myself.
Right.
It can find you other revenue generating opportunities. Yeah. So I really like the business reviews. They're different than like the regular check-in of where it's like, hey, here's the work that was done in the last week, the last month. This is like big picture.
I think business reviews they can be what you need them to be.
Yes.
Because for me, especially working like with my local SEO clients, I'm working directly with the business owners. There's no other stakeholders.
You might have a spouse who's a stakeholder.
Fair enough.
You might have another consultant.
There's not that happens a lot. That actually happens a lot. But it doesn't have to be quite as formal.
Doesn't.
Like if you're working one-on-one with a client,
Yeah.
But in whatever form they take on for you, they're a useful thing to standardize for yourself.
Yeah, and a couple of other things. So from the beginning of this podcast and like how I typically work, it starts with you need to separate yourself from the competition. So are most freelancers providing a nice proposal where they're understanding business problems and they're doing really good discovery? No, they're just giving a price. Right? They might give a price in a case study. You're going in and looking to understand. If you've been listening to this podcast and you're following what we've been suggesting, you're looking to understand their business needs, mm-hmm. their objectives, how you can have a positive impact on those objectives, on their goals, on their business, on their bottom line. And when you do things like have a structured proposal, when you have structured check-ins, when you have some at least somewhat formal business review, and you're saying, hey, it's time for our business review. Hey, let's get the business review on the calendar now. Because we're gonna do this every 3 months. Let's just throw it. We can have a placeholder. We can move it if you're taking vacation or something, right? But like, we want to do it right around this time. You're setting yourself apart
from every other.
Exactly. You think about when you first got into freelancing, you're figuring it out on the fly. You don't have all of these things. We're trying to help you as a freelancer get a leg up as early as possible. And when you do things that, quite frankly, enterprise sales organizations, enterprise service organizations, big consultants, what they're doing, you're earning more trust, because they're going, this person has systems, they have processes, they have tools. It
makes you look not only bigger, but more experienced than you actually are. And especially as a starting freelancer, as somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of that built in, it's really easy to look like you don't know these things. And so by having, I would start with something, both, this goes for your proposal, this goes for your business reviews, and a lot of things. Starts with something simple and improve upon it as you go, and customize it to the industries that you tend to spend a lot of time in, and the types of clients that you tend to work with a lot.
And the first time you do anything, it's going to take longer and it's going to be harder.
And it's not going to be very good, generally speaking.
But it will be better than what you didn't have, not having it, right? So you can always tweak things. You can always refine them, and you should be. But you got to start somewhere. And if you're starting with, look, this whole thing is new versus existing. Why is it easier to keep an existing customer versus getting a new one? Because you got to start over every time with the new one. Right. You don't have to start over every time with an existing customer. These business reviews, the referrals, all of those things go into making your life easier in the long run. I used to, I paid for college through doing concrete work, and I remember a lot of overlays, warehouses and garage floors and repairs. 90% of the work was in the preparation. 10% was in the actual execution of the work. And I find that is common. It's a common theme in a lot of areas of business.
What's that Abe Lincoln quote? Give me 8 hours to cut down a tree, and I'll spend the first 6 sharpening my axe.
Yeah, right. So
I think I got that right. It's close.
It sounds good. So we're talking about sharpening your axe, so that the more you put up front to doing these sorts of things, and you can do one at a time, right? Sure. Start on your proposal before you're doing your business review, because you got to start somewhere.
I was going to say,
you got to get the customers in.
There's no need to have a business review if you have no clients.
Right. So it's a path. It's a journey. Start with where your customers start. Where you start with your customers, and then go from there. If you've got a great customer that you've been working with for a while, suggest a business review. There you go. Right? And ask for that referral. Get the feedback so you know what you need to do differently or better. Do these things, and you're going to set yourself apart from other freelancers, and even from other businesses that have been around for a long time. You'd be surprised how many businesses, when you're inside, you're like, we're just scrambling around here, right? I talk to people all the time where it's oh yeah, I do it this way, this person does it that way. There's nothing formal. We've just all taken from our backgrounds. Sure. You have an opportunity as a freelancer to be consistent and to have that set up for yourself. Spend the time to do it, and it will pay off in the end.
In the long run, yeah. I think that's a good spot to wrap up this little mini-series. Yeah. If you do have any questions, something that we didn't cover during these episodes, or something that you wanted clarification on, leave a comment for us or send us an email. And it's something that we very well might revisit or come back to do a follow-up episode to.
If you know anyone who might benefit
from listening to this podcast,
we would love for you to pass it along to them.
Exactly.
So referrals are important to us too.
Exactly. All right. Well, appreciate it, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Talk to you guys next week.